This story is titled, My Mom Threw Me Out, Replaced Me with My Stepsister, and Used My College Fund. Now she's at my doorstep begging to live in the house I inherited from Grandpa. Hey everyone, before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. You ever realize your mom sees you as a placeholder for someone else? Yeah, that's where this story starts. My name's Lily, 23 female, and up until I was 13, I thought my family was normal. My dad, Ethan, was a superhero in my eyes. Always present, always loving. My mom, Fiona, well, she was more of a perfectionist who was never satisfied. Growing up in a cramped two-bedroom apartment didn't feel like a struggle because Dad made it magical. Weekends were for homemade pancakes, balcony gardens, and building forts in the living room. Fiona? She'd hover in the background, usually muttering about how we needed more money or a bigger place. It wasn't until Dad got sick that I realized just how little Fiona cared about the life we had. When the doctor said the words pancreatic cancer, my dad tried to laugh it off. "I'll be fine, kiddo," he'd say. But I could see the truth in his tired eyes. He wasn't fine. Within months, the man who used to pick me up and swing me around could barely hold a coffee cup. The day he died, Fiona fell apart. Or at least that's what she wanted everyone to think. She cried a lot in front of people, but at home she checked out. I guess I reminded her too much of him. She stopped talking to me, unless it was absolutely necessary, and spent most of her time locked in her room. If it weren't for Grandpa Henry, I don't know what I would have done. Grandpa wasn't just a stand-in parent. He was everything. He took me in like it was the most natural thing in the world. His house, a beautiful old Victorian, became my safe haven. Weekends turned into weeks, and before long, I was living there full-time. Grandpa never complained, not once. He'd just smile and say, "This house was always meant to be full of family." I'd hear from Fiona now and then, mostly out of obligation. The conversations were short and forced, like she was checking something off a to-do list. She'd ask about school, barely listen to my answers, and then rush off to take care of something. It hurt, but I got used to it. Grandpa was my real family now. Then, out of nowhere, Fiona showed up at Grandpa's house one sunny Saturday morning. She was glowing, dressed in a bright yellow sundress and wearing makeup like she was headed to a party. "Lily, pack your bags. You're coming home," she said, grinning like she'd just won the lottery. I froze. "What? Why?" "We're starting fresh," she chirped, like it was the most normal thing in the world. Grandpa looked just as confused as I felt, but he didn't say anything. I think he wanted me to make my own decision. So I went. I thought maybe Fiona had turned over a new leaf. Maybe she wanted to fix things between us. Boy, was I wrong. When we walked into the apartment, I saw a tall guy standing in the living room with a girl who looked a few years younger than me. Fiona practically danced over to them. "Lily, meet Greg and Mia. They're part of the family now." Greg gave me a stiff smile and a nod. Mia, on the other hand, had this smug look like she was already planning how to make my life miserable. "Hi," I muttered, feeling like a guest in my own house. Fiona acted like this was some grand reunion. "We're one big happy family now," she declared, completely ignoring the fact that I was still standing there in shock. Living with Fiona, Greg, and Mia was like being a background character in someone else's family drama, except I didn't sign up for the role. From the moment I got there, it was clear this wasn't my home anymore. It didn't take long to figure out what one big happy family meant. Greg moved into Dad's old spot on the couch. Fiona acted like Mia was the center of the universe, and Greg just nodded along to whatever Fiona wanted. Let's start with the room situation. My old room? Gone. Mia had taken it over within hours of me moving back. Fiona didn't even try to ease me into it. She just handed it to Mia on a silver platter. "Mia needs her own space," she said, when I protested. "You're older. You can make do in the guest room," as if that was the end of the conversation. I got shoved into the tiny guest room, which was a glorified closet. I barely had enough space for my bed and a desk, let alone my books or clothes. From that moment on, it was clear. I wasn't part of Fiona's perfect little family. I was just an afterthought. Mia wasted no time making herself at home in my room. She hung up string lights, slapped posters of boy bands on the walls, and filled the closet with clothes I'd never be able to afford. She didn't even ask if I wanted to keep anything that was in there. It was like a slap in the face every time I walked past the door. "Hey Mia, can I grab a few of my books from the shelf in there?" I asked one day. She looked at me like I'd asked her to hand over a kidney. I guess, but don't mess up my stuff." Her stuff? My books were in my room, but apparently that didn't matter anymore. It wasn't just the room, though. Fiona's favoritism ran so deep, it was like she'd completely forgotten I existed. Mia wanted ballet lessons? Done. Fiona didn't even hesitate. She pulled out her wallet and signed Mia up for private classes the same day. When I was younger, I begged for dance lessons. Fiona had told me we couldn't afford it. When I pointed this out, Fiona waved me off. Mia has real talent, Lily. She deserves this. Oh, and let's not forget the phone. My phone was an old hand-me-down that barely worked. Meanwhile, Mia complained that her phone was too slow, so Fiona went out and bought her the newest iPhone. Mom, my phone is literally falling apart, I said one night. You'll get one when it's necessary, Fiona replied, without even looking up from her laptop. But the worst part wasn't the material stuff. It was the attention. Fiona acted like Mia was her only child. Every time I tried to talk to her, Mia would interrupt with some minor crisis, and Fiona would drop everything to help her. Mom, can we talk about my college plans? I asked one evening while she was cooking. Before she could answer, Mia waltzed into the kitchen. Mom, I can't figure out this math homework, she whined, holding up a worksheet. Fiona immediately turned to her. Oh, sweetie, let me help you. But what about later, Lily? Fiona said, brushing me off like I wasn't even there. Later never came. Mia was also the queen of passive-aggressive comments. She had this way of making me feel small without outright saying anything cruel. Oh, I didn't realize you were still wearing those shoes, she said one day, looking at my scuffed sneakers. They're like vintage or something, right? Or my personal favorite. Oh, I thought you didn't care about having nice things. That's like your vibe. I tried to stay out of the way as much as possible. I spent most of my time in the tiny guest room or at the library. But even when I wasn't around, Mia found ways to make me feel unwelcome. She'd leave her stuff all over the house. Shoes in the hallway, textbooks on the couch, hair ties in the bathroom, and then blame me when Fiona asked about the mess. Lily, can you clean up after yourself? Fiona said one night, holding up a pink hairbrush that was clearly Mia's. That's not mine, I replied, but Fiona didn't want to hear it. Just pick it up. It's not a big deal. It wasn't just Fiona either. Greg wasn't much better. He acted like Mia was some kind of prodigy who could do no wrong. Whenever Fiona started talking about how amazing Mia was, Greg would chime in with his 2 cents. She's so dedicated, he said one night at dinner. Always practicing ballet and studying so hard. Mia giggled, like she wasn't lapping up every word. Meanwhile, I was sitting there, eating my spaghetti in silence, wondering if they even remembered I was at the table. The few times Greg did talk to me, it was always condescending. Lily, you should try to be more like Mia, he said once. She's really going places. I wanted to scream. I was working my butt off in school, keeping my grades up, and planning for college. But none of that mattered because I wasn't Mia. One day, I decided to push back. You know, not everything has to revolve around Mia, I said during dinner. The table went silent. Fiona stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Lily, that's uncalled for, she said, her voice icy. Mia is adjusting to a new family dynamic. You need to be more supportive. Supportive? I was barely hanging on. And she wanted me to be supportive? I knew then that things weren't going to get better. Fiona didn't see me as her daughter anymore. I was just an inconvenience, a reminder of a life she didn't want. Mia, on the other hand, was everything Fiona thought a daughter should be. Obedient, pretty, and eager to please. And Greg? He was just happy to go along with whatever made Fiona happy. I started spending less and less time at home. I'd stay late at school, hang out at the library, or go for long walks just to avoid being in that house. The less I saw of Fiona, Greg, and Mia, the better. But deep down, I knew I couldn't avoid them forever. Graduation was coming up, and that fight would change everything. The closer I got to graduation, the more I felt like I was walking into war with Fiona. She was all smiles and fake enthusiasm whenever we had family dinners, but I could feel the tension building. It was like she was waiting for the right moment to drop a bomb on me. Meanwhile, I'd been quietly making plans for my escape. College applications, sent, acceptance letters, received, financial aid forms, filed. I wasn't about to let Fiona or anyone else mess this up for me. Dad's college fund was my ticket out, and I wasn't going to waste it. I figured I'd break the news after dinner one night, hoping that if I framed it as good news, Fiona wouldn't have a reason to flip out. But of course, she found a reason. Mom, Greg, I've got some exciting news, I started, keeping my voice calm. I got into State University. I'm going to study finance and business management. For a second, the room went quiet. I thought maybe, just maybe, Fiona would surprise me and be happy for me. But instead, she exchanged a look with Greg that made my stomach sink. Actually, Lily, she said, setting her fork down, Greg and I have been talking, and we think it's better if you don't go to college right now. I blinked. What? Greg cleared his throat, like he was about to deliver some grand speech. College isn't for everyone, Lily. We think it would be more practical for you to start working after graduation. You can save up some money and maybe go to school later if you still want to. My heart was pounding, but I tried to stay calm. I don't need to save up. Dad left me a college fund for this exact reason. Fiona shifted uncomfortably in her chair. About that fund? I froze. What about it? Mia's been excelling in school, Fiona said, her tone sweet, like she was trying to convince me this was a good thing. She has so much potential, and we think it would be better to use the money for her education. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You want to take my college fund and give it to Mia? Greg chimed in, all smug and condescending. She's very talented, Lily. It's the right thing to do. You should want to support your sister. Stepsister, I snapped, my voice shaking. And no, I don't want to support her with my money. That fund is the last thing Dad left for me. You can't just take it. Fiona's face hardened. Stop being so selfish. We're a family. Families share. Families don't steal from each other, I shot back. That money is mine. End of discussion. But Fiona wasn't done. If you can't support this family, then maybe you don't belong here, she said, her voice icy. I stared at her, my chest tightening. Are you seriously kicking me out because I won't let you take what's mine? Fiona didn't even blink. If you're going to act like this, then yes. You're toxic, Lily. This family doesn't need that kind of negativity. Greg nodded along, like a little lapdog. Mia, of course, just sat there smirking. She didn't say a word, but the look on her face said everything. She knew she'd already won. I didn't bother arguing anymore. What was the point? Fiona had made it clear she didn't care about me. She only cared about her perfect little family and her golden child, Mia. I packed my stuff that night, throwing whatever I could into a couple of garbage bags. Fiona didn't help. She didn't even come to my room to say goodbye. Greg stayed out of sight, probably too scared to deal with the fallout. As I hauled my things out to the curb, Mia walked past me, phone in hand. She didn't even look up when she said, "Bye, Lily. Hope you figure things out." I wanted to scream at her, but what was the point? Instead, I called Grandpa Henry. "Come home, Lily," he said, his voice steady and reassuring. "You'll always have a place here." Moving back in with Grandpa felt like finally being able to breathe again. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was in ongoing stress. He didn't ask for details about why I left Fiona's house. He just said, "I'm proud of you for standing your ground," and left it at that. The first few days were rough. I kept replaying the fight with Fiona in my head, wondering if there was something I could have said to make her understand. But deep down, I knew there wasn't. Fiona wasn't interested in understanding me. She'd made her choice, Mia over me, and nothing I said would have changed that. I threw myself into my college plans, determined to make something of myself. If Fiona thought I was going to fail without her, she was in for a surprise. Grandpa helped me get everything in order, from tuition payments to moving into the dorms. He even drove me to campus on my first day, giving me a pep talk the whole way there. "Your dad would be so proud of you," he said, as he helped me carry my stuff into my dorm. That was all I needed to hear. I didn't hear from Fiona for years after that. Not a single call, text, or email. And honestly, it was a relief. I didn't want her fake apologies or her excuses. I was done with her and her toxic family. College was everything I needed it to be. Freedom, a fresh start, and no Fiona breathing down my neck. I made friends, aced my classes, and worked part-time to keep myself busy. Grandpa was my only connection to home. I called him every couple of days to catch up, and he always made time to visit me on campus during holidays. "Don't forget where you came from, Lily," he'd remind me. "You've got your dad's heart and my stubbornness. Use them wisely." Meanwhile, Fiona, Greg, and Mia, radio silence. They became a distant memory. Not a single call or text for years, which honestly suited me just fine. I'd cut them out of my life, and they clearly had no interest in fixing that. Just a chapter in my life I was happy to close, or so I thought. But as the saying goes, peace doesn't last forever. I had no idea Fiona was still scheming behind the scenes. She hadn't forgotten about me, or the things she thought she was entitled to. And when Grandpa passed away, she saw her chance to swoop in and take what wasn't hers. But this time, things didn't go according to her plan. It was the middle of my final semester when I got the call. I'd just finished a morning lecture and was heading back to my dorm when my phone buzzed. Seeing Fiona's name pop up after years of nothing made my stomach churn. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the decline button. Part of me wanted to let it go straight to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hello," I answered, already bracing myself. Her voice was flat, like she was reading off a script. Your grandfather passed away last night. The funeral is Thursday at 2 p.m. at Hartford Funeral Home. That was it. No condolences, no warmth, no acknowledgement of how devastating this news was. She might as well have been giving me directions to the DMV. The phone slipped from my hand as the words sank in. Grandpa was gone. My rock, my safe haven, the only real family I had left, gone. My roommate found me sitting on the floor, sobbing into my knees. She didn't ask questions, just sat next to me and let me cry it out. Thursday came way too fast. I arrived at the funeral home early, wearing a black dress that suddenly felt too tight and itchy. Everything felt wrong because Grandpa wasn't there to make it right. I half expected Fiona to show up late in some over-the-top outfit, making it all about her. And surprise, she didn't disappoint. About halfway through the service, the back doors swung open, and in walked Fiona, Greg, and Mia, dressed like they were auditioning for a funeral fashion show. Fiona was in a sleek black dress with a matching hat and veil. Mia was in some designer number, and Greg looked like he just stepped out of a men's magazine. They didn't sit with me or even acknowledge me. Instead, they took seats in the back like they were VIP guests at a private event. Fiona's eyes darted around the room, scanning every face like she was calculating how much attention she was getting. I tried to ignore them and focus on the service, but it was hard. The whole thing felt like a performance for Fiona, and it made my grief even harder to bear. After the service, I went straight to Grandpa's house, desperate for some kind of comfort. But what I found instead made my blood boil. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw garbage bags scattered across the front lawn. At first, I thought maybe someone had dumped trash there by accident. But as I got closer, I realized it wasn't trash. It was my stuff. My clothes, books, photo albums, and keepsakes were all stuffed into ripped garbage bags, spilling out onto the grass. My childhood memories, the little pieces of my life, treated like garbage. I tried my key in the front door, but it didn't work. The lock had been changed. I stood there shaking with rage and disbelief when the door swung open. Fiona stood in the doorway, still wearing her funeral dress, but now with a smug smile on her face. "Oh, good. You're here to collect your things," she said casually, like she was doing me a favor. "This is my house now. Dad's finally gone, and as his only child, I'm the rightful heir." I stared at her, struggling to find words. "You couldn't even wait until after the funeral?" She shrugged. "Why drag things out? I need to make space for Mia's things. She's getting your old room, by the way. She's always wanted a bigger bedroom." Her cold, calculated cruelty left me speechless. I didn't bother arguing. I just grabbed as many of my belongings as I could carry and stuffed them into my car. That night, I sat in my dorm room surrounded by garbage bags, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Fiona hadn't just betrayed me. She disrespected Grandpa in the worst way possible. I thought about calling a lawyer or doing something to fight back, but I didn't even know where to start. I felt powerless, like Fiona had won again. But then, a few days later, I got a call from Grandpa's lawyer. "Ms. Lilly," he said, his tone calm but serious. "I'm calling about your grandfather's will. We'll be reading it this Thursday at 10 a.m. Can you attend?" I wasn't sure what to expect. Fiona had already claimed the house, so what else could there be? Still, I agreed to go. If nothing else, I wanted to hear what Grandpa had to say. Thursday morning, I walked into the lawyer's office to find Fiona, Greg, and Mia already there. Fiona was sitting in a leather chair, looking like she owned the place. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her tone dripping with disdain. "You're not needed for this. We're handling family business." I ignored her and took a seat. The lawyer, Mr. Anderson, started reading the will, and what came next completely blindsided everyone in the room. "To my granddaughter Lily," he began, "I leave my house at 1542 Oak Street, the lake cabin, the farmland in Maple Valley, and all my savings." The room went silent. Fiona's smug smile froze on her face, and Greg looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. "What?" Fiona screeched, snatching the document from Mr. Anderson's hands. "That's not possible. I'm his daughter." Mr. Anderson calmly retrieved the document. "The will is clear, Mrs. Waters. Mr. Henry left everything to Lily." Fiona's face turned beet red as she spluttered, "This is fraud. She manipulated him. I'll contest this." "You're welcome to try," Mr. Anderson said, unfazed. "But the will is ironclad. Any challenge would be costly and unsuccessful." Fiona turned to me, her eyes brimming with fake tears. "Lily, sweetie, please. We sold our apartment to move into the house. We have nowhere to go." I stared at her, remembering every betrayal, every cruel word, and every time she chose Mia over me. "That sounds like a you problem," I said, standing up. "You kicked me out once. Don't expect me to save you now." I walked out of that office feeling lighter than I had in years. Fiona's reign was over, and Grandpa's legacy was safe, with me. Walking out of the lawyer's office with Grandpa's will in my hand felt surreal. I kept waiting for someone to stop me, to tell me it was all a mistake, that Fiona would swoop in and take everything. But no one did. It was official. The house, the lake cabin, the farmland in Maple Valley, and Grandpa's savings were all mine. Fiona, Greg, and Mia had stormed out after their little meltdown. I figured they'd give up after Mr. Anderson told them the will was ironclad, but I clearly underestimated Fiona's entitlement. The next day, I went straight to the house. My house. Seeing it again made my chest tighten, thinking of all the memories Grandpa and I had shared there. But as I pulled into the driveway, I saw their car parked out front. "You've got to be kidding me," I muttered. Sure enough, Fiona was still there. She'd made herself at home, my home, like nothing had changed. I didn't bother knocking. I walked right in, my heart pounding as I saw them sitting in the living room. Fiona was lounging on the couch, sipping tea like she owned the place. Greg was flipping through a magazine, and Mia was scrolling on her phone, legs propped up on the coffee table. "What are you doing here?" I said, my voice sharp. Fiona barely glanced up. "This is my house," she said casually. "You're the one intruding." I held up the paperwork from the lawyer. "Actually, it's my house. Grandpa left it to me, remember?" Her expression didn't even falter. "That will is a mistake. I've already started the process to contest it." I laughed, though there was no humor in it. "You can't contest it, Fiona. The lawyer already told you it's airtight." Greg finally looked up, frowning. "We've already moved in, Lily. Where do you expect us to go?" "That's not my problem," I shot back. "You had an apartment. You sold it, remember? I didn't tell you to do that." Fiona's fake tears started almost instantly. "Lily, sweetie, please. We're family. Grandpa would want us to stay together." "Family?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow. Her tears stopped as quickly as they started, replaced by her usual icy glare. "We're not leaving," she said firmly. "Yes, you are," I replied. "You have until the end of the day to pack your things and get out, or I'm calling the police for trespassing." I walked out before she could argue further. There was no way I was getting into another screaming match with her. I went straight to a locksmith and explained the situation. He agreed to meet me at the house later that evening, to change the locks. When I got back, Fiona and her crew were still there, and they'd done absolutely nothing to pack. "Time's up," I said, standing in the doorway. She stood up, her hands on her hips. "This is ridiculous, Lily. Do you have any idea how hard it is to find a new place on short notice? Have some compassion." "Compassion?" I said, laughing bitterly. "Where was your compassion when you threw me out?" Mia finally spoke up, her voice dripping with entitlement. "You're just being petty. You don't even need all this space. What are you going to do with it anyway?" "Whatever I want," I shot back. "Because it's mine. Now get out." They finally started packing, though not without a lot of complaining. Fiona kept muttering about how unfair it all was, while Greg sulked and Mia made a show of slamming drawers and cabinets. I stood outside, watching as they loaded their car with garbage bags and suitcases. It was eerily satisfying, seeing their belongings on the porch just like mine had been. As they were finishing up, Fiona turned to me one last time. "You're no daughter of mine!" she spat, her voice shaking with anger. "Your father would be ashamed of you." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "No, Fiona. Dad would be proud that I finally stood up for myself." She opened her mouth to say something else, but I closed the door in her face. Once the locksmith changed the locks and handed me the new keys, I sat in the living room, the silence almost deafening. The house felt empty without Grandpa, but for the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace. The next few days were spent cleaning and organizing. I found little notes and reminders of Grandpa everywhere, a book with his handwritten notes in the margins, a photo of him and Dad from years ago, even a jar of his favorite tea in the kitchen. It wasn't easy, but I decided to honor his memory by moving forward. I listed the farmland and lake cabin for rent, figuring the income could help me save for the future. As for the house, I wasn't ready to make any big decisions yet. For now, it was home. Fiona tried to contact me a few times after that, but I didn't respond. I knew she wasn't reaching out to apologize. She just wanted something, probably money or a place to stay. But I was done with her games. A few weeks later, I got a letter from Mr. Anderson, Grandpa's lawyer. Inside was a handwritten note from Grandpa, one he'd left specifically for me. "Lily, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I'm sorry I couldn't stick around longer, but I know you'll be okay. The house, the cabin, and the farmland are yours to do with as you see fit. Just promise me you'll keep the family photos in the attic. Some memories are worth holding on to, even the painful ones. I'm proud of you, Lily. Always have been. Always will be. Grandpa Henry." I sat there for a long time, holding the letter, tears streaming down my face. Fiona had tried to take everything from me, my home, my future, my sense of self. But in the end, Grandpa had given me the tools to fight back. This wasn't just a win for me, it was a win for everything he and Dad had worked so hard to build.